Fire! Welcome live, everyone. So I am with Jay Pascua, and I'm just checking in LinkedIn and YouTube if I am well live, and all will not be perfect. But guess what? It's when it's imperfect that there is fun. So right now, checking on YouTube. Yes, I am live on YouTube and checking on LinkedIn. I am very checking LinkedIn to see if I'm live, and I am live because we have an amazing audience to come. So, and we are live and audible. So, Mr. J, how are you feeling today, first and foremost?
I'm actually doing pretty good this morning. Um, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about the rules of engagement in storytelling and to be your first honored guest for the series that you're now putting together. This book club. It's awesome.
Yes, and as I said, it will be imperfect. Like I have no camera, proper camera out of my laptop. I have no other microphone out of my laptop, so it is imperfect, but it is done, and so that's what matter. I don't want to say, oh no, I'm not going to do it because there is no cam, there is no gun. So it's like it is imperfect and it is done. And I was writing the first chapter like 1 hour ago, like zoop. But at the same time, I grasped a lot of notes. I was writing a lot of things, and I'm really happy to dive in. And this session is not only for the persons that are attending live, but also for the future persons that might watch it on replay. And what I like on the replay, it could be in 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, or 100 years. Who knows? Jay in 2110, So that here is the session of great great grandpa Jay with Ollie in 2025 on the 13th of January, talking about the first chapter, the first rule of his first and new book. You published probably other books, but it's your new book in 2024 and 2025, The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling, one of your 43 new books to come. Who knows? So, Mr. J, let us know first who is Jay and what led you to storytelling?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first off, my name is Jay, right? And I come from the island of Guam. It's the southernmost island in the Mariana Island chain. And that island is in the Western Pacific. A lot of romantic stories talk about, the South Pacific. Well, there's, four directions, right? So one of those directions is west, and we're in the Western Pacific. And I am part of the indigenous population there, of the indigenous population. And that indigenous population are the Chamorro people. So I'm Chamorro, but I also have ancestry that hails from the Philippines, Ilocos Norte, as a matter of fact. My grandfather, he immigrated to the United States via Hawaii and then um, basically became a mess attendant, a civilian mess attendant in the U.S. Navy right at the onset of World War II. And so, anyway, that's part of my heritage. But who I am as a storyteller started when, at the tender age of 19, I was in a practicum program at a vocational school that taught me computer science. Well, there really wasn't a need for a computer science graduate in the college. So they decided to put me with the public relations person at the college who used Mac computers, not 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 the other computers, right? The ones we use currently. And back then they were usually IBM made. Anyway, um, so I got into storytelling because of that. They didn't need networking. They didn't need somebody coding. They needed somebody to, well, they really didn't need anybody. So they the public relations officer decided, what is it that you want to do? And I said, why don't we create a newsletter for my class before they graduate and use the Mac computer to put together this newsletter. And then from there, there was a call for young reporters or young aspiring reporters to become part of the very first youth section in the newspaper, the local newspaper back home. And that led then to me meeting a producer and journalist from the local cable news station. And I became an intern. So I started as a storyteller in the news business, the legacy news media, way back when, in the 1900s, like some kids say. So all of that led me then to my passion about wanting to share my heritage and my culture with the rest of the world. And because I had my training as a reporter, I decided I could pivot, use that training to help tell the story of my ancestry, and potentially help in my legacy in sharing that ancestry with the rest of the world and with my descendants. And learning that all of those things, and then pivoting again, moving to the mainland, what we would say on the mainland United States or contiguous United States to Alabama, um, there wasn't any opportunities for a news reporter in a little tiny town. So I joined the call center and used my interviewing skills to help me in that career, and used all of that knowledge to help me. So all of those things put together created the storytelling strategist you see today. So I hope that wasn't too long of an explanation.
No, it's okay, and I was really amazed because you were explaining a lot of different experiences and different fields. So I feel like you are a bit busy of checking news or information. I hear some voices in the background. So are you watching television or listening to the news on the radio? I don't know, but it's just to let you inform that, and also to acknowledge the first part I was reading, the audience preferences, the interests, and the expectations. And the first thing that I was writing. And when it comes to audience, most of the time it's like Audi, it's like listening. But the audience could also be someone who is reading or someone who is watching. And so before I'm asking you an interesting question, I was also realizing that you have to adapt, but it will be for later. But being in a call center and telling a story in front of an audience, or uh, receive a call from someone, you have to adapt to different contexts. You are not the same, and you are not telling the same in these kind of things. Same with the newspaper, writing stories, and also telling stories face to face. So audience preferences, interests, and expectations. That that means that you have to use multiple different ways to collect the audience preferences, their interests, and their expectations. Because, and that's also part of my question, also, that an audience could be a reader. So it means also that you have not only to adapt to their style, you are not uh, speaking as you are writing, and you have also to adapt to the way of collecting their interest and their expectations. With that, I let you pour some of your wisdom.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. Um, there's a portion or a section later in the book where it talks about the different types of audiences and kind of the the way that you receive feedback. You know, in a live audience where there are people actually engaging with you, um, you get the feedback immediately, right? And so you get to tailor your message as you go, right? You can see if you're on a stage the faces in the crowd, and when you look at their faces and you see that they're maybe like wondering what you're saying or pondering on it, you can then expound a little bit into the topic that you're talking about further than you would normally, because you're trying to really engage the audience. When you're writing, you have to take all of those things into consideration in that moment because you don't get the immediate feedback, right? So when you're thinking about your audience, especially in writing, you have to really put yourself in the audience and reacting, providing that feedback for yourself. So when you're thinking about who it is you need to talk to, a lot of times you want to sit in the audience so that you can provide yourself that feedback. So when considering your audience, sometimes the audience is you. Really, if you this is and if you're an entrepreneur, here's how you can look at this. If there's a need in order to be a good entrepreneur, you have to provide basically that need. And when you do that, you're filling the gap. It's, you're bringing to market the product that people want and need. And so the same thing is true when you're an author or a public speaker or someone who's trying to engage an audience. So it's truly important to consider all those things. Um, and sometimes the only way to understand the audience is to be the audience, right? To fill that need, you're thinking to yourself, well, if I was this person, this avatar, what message would I need or want so that I can have an informed decision? So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, and at the same time, an audience. Most of the time, when I hear audience, I hear those who are listening. But I think also an audience could be the visitors of a museum that are watching different paintings of an artist, even though they are not listening to the painting. It's an audience because they will, and that you can track. There is also a way of tracking. The way of tracking an audience that are reading is not the way of tracking an audience that you are live or digital, and the way of tracking an audience that is visiting your paintings. Because then, how many people are there? Which are the paintings they are going to see? How much time they are placing their attention to each painting? These are kind of feedback interesting. And this is not the same as someone who is listening live or even in a detailed setting. So thank you again to our audience right now that are listening to YouTube or LinkedIn. And thank you also for the replay team. Our audience could be watching or listening in few hours, days, weeks, months, years later. So whether you are watching, feel free to engage and feel free to give us your feedback, your comments, your remark, your insight, whatever, because we are doing it not only for me and Jay, we are doing it for you. And that's what matters. You are writing this book not for your self pleasure, but also for impacting people. And we can impact through audiobook, through books written, whether it's paper or Kindle. We can also impact by right now this session to talk about this book. And that's why I'm really happy to be hosting this book club session, because if I don't host a book club session, I will not probably have read your book until now. So it's also for me a way to push myself and a way for you to be more visible. So it's a win, 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 win for every layer. And so next point I was quoting is about engaging and relatable stories. So engaging is what we are trying to do right now, fostering comments or any feedback from you or about what we say, but also relatable stories. And that's difficult when it's live. You can check the feedback right on live. You see their reaction, their smile, their love. But here right now it's really challenging because there is just two of us on stage, and then there is the YouTube and the LinkedIn audience, which are not connected. Either they are connected. Probably there are two, three, five people listening right now, plus probably some dozens of hundreds in the replay. But we just grasp the fact that the story is relatable by their feedback, their insights, their comments. So tell us more about engaging and relatable stories.
So engaging, when talking about engaging and relatable stories, what I'm talking about essentially is, again, being the audience. And you almost have to kind of foreshadow what the audience would want, right? Again, providing yourself that feedback. If I was the audience, what would I want to hear from this individual? What knowledge can they bring to me that will impact me? And there, if you look at it this way, there was a point in time when you did not have that knowledge. What did you do to gain that knowledge? And how can you use that example to help others, right? Placing yourself there in that moment where you're learning the one thing that you want to share with your audience, and being that person wanting to get that information, right? There you have the ability then to relate to someone, because that is the person you want. That is the person that you're looking for. That they didn't have the knowledge until they picked up your book, until they sat in the audience listening to you, until they heard you on a replay on LinkedIn. You have to look at it from that perspective, foreshadow potentially what the audience might want to gain from the knowledge that you're sharing. And I said this in a previous audio event where you have to start at the end and deconstruct. So starting at the end means, what do I want the audience to gain from me writing this book? Ask yourself that question. And then from there, work your way back to the beginning. And you're going to see that you're going to have a much more congruent, or much more efficient message to reach the audience.
Thank you so much. And feel free in the audience to ask any question or any comments. It's worth to repeat it around all around the session, because we need also we need no we would like to have your engagement, so because it's more interactive. So now I'm going to pinpoint some other aspects I was capturing while I was reading your first rule of engagement, which is knowing your audience. So I was capturing emotional stories that resonate and are memorable. And that's really, for me, essential, because it's not only the brain, it's also emotions from the body and from the heart. And so it's about finding a common ground also for story. Then having personality and authenticity. That's also important, because we have all our own personalities. They are different. So it's really also to adapt to your audience, to say, okay, what are their personalities? I think when you are having a live session, you are not acting the same when you are delivering to a young audience rather than to deliver to an elder audience, or if you are delivering to corporates, or you are delivering to people that are from your Chamorro community. You have to dance and to adapt. So I was also pinpointing humor in storytelling is so important, because humor can foster emotions, but also it requires emotional intelligence. Because guess what? In, I don't know in your side in US, but in, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years ago, we could approach something that we cannot approach anymore now. Like I was few 1 or 2 years ago, I was witnessing a scandal. Someone talking about uh, homosexuals, I think, or making jokes about that. Like 20, 40 years ago, it was like, okay, move on. But now, any joke about that is like, ooh, like it's called in French, levé de bouclier. Like the shields are like, okay. And it's really some scandal, and the people are forced to excuse themselves, apologize for that, because nowadays we can hurt many communities without awareness, because we are using jokes that quote unquote are funny, but funny for who? So humor and storytelling, could you tell us more?
Oh, humor and storytelling, it really is it, it, it's a delicate issue, right? Um, you have to be exactly that, mindful of the audience and where you're located, right? So if, let's say, you're giving a eulogy, do you inject humor in a eulogy about the person?
And how?
And how exactly, right? How do you do that? Well, you can, right? You don't want to have it where you're disparaging the the name of the person or the personality of the person when they were living, right? Because people want to remember those who have passed fondly. They don't want to be triggered by memories that or things that are disparaging, right? So if you say something that may be perceived, this is the key, okay? Perceived to be hateful to the person, it could be very detrimental, right? You have to think about what people may perceive from that bit of humor that you're sharing. Now, if it's an anecdote that really brings to life the personality of the person, then absolutely do that. Use it. It can bring levity to a very somber situation, right? But you have to be very cognizant, very aware of the audience. That's why it's really important to consider your words before you engage that particular audience. Can I say this joke without bringing harm or triggering someone? That's an important thing to understand, especially in situations where it is somber and maybe even serious, right? If there was mass casualties of a car crash or something, maybe an even bigger incident, right? Do you inject humor there? You wouldn't, right? Because of the seriousness of the situation. You have to be that gauge. And so having that emotional intelligence at that moment where you're engaging the audience is extremely important. So go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you also, Crystal, for being there and for engaging with us. Hi, Crystal. Such amazing to see you. And so I was just like the humor. It might be challenging and really difficult to say, okay, what I'm going to say, does it potentially harm domestic abuse survivors? Does it harm religion? Does it harm cultures? Does it harm disabled persons? Does it harm? It could be challenging, but at the same time, it's like if we don't do that, we are going to potentially harm a lot of people. So it's really to know if something could, and also, for instance, with the choice, not only about the humor, but also the choice of the words. And I had to catch myself also in the past about that. The expression that we invite, it's like not need, but for better reception, we invite people to not put together. It's committing plus suicide. People are not committing suicide because committing is an act of okay, it's a bit like criminal commit suicide, and so it's really to avoid that and to use instead took his life if it's the case. So it's really the to be aware about the word. It's really important. So thank you, Crystal, for sharing and for giving us the gift of your presence. Your presence is a time that will never be back. So it's really incredible to see you and to see also the replay team. And because it's something we can be humorous, but at some point you have to also um, to be aware about not activating the emotions of the person, because there is this famous quote that from Maya and Angelou, they might not remember what you said to them, but they might remember how you made them feel. And that's really important. So now we are going to shift to the three Ks I was discovering also. If I made any mistake, feel free to correct me, but I was noting develop content calendar, craft compelling storylines, and maintain quality and consistency. So could you tell us some more about that, Mr. J?
Sure, absolutely. Uh, you have to, it's okay, right, to have an extemporaneous, spur of the moment type conversation, right? Especially like in LinkedIn live events. But lay out for however long you want, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, maybe an entire year, right? Lay out the blueprint for what it is you want to discuss in those live events. So make sure you have a calendar. Now, you don't have to buy one at the store. You can go use whatever it is. If you have an email address, like everybody does, right? Usually there's a calendar associated with that email address. Use that calendar and put in information about the lives you want to have, right? The live events. So on Wednesday, what is it that you want to discuss? On Thursday, what is it that you want to discuss? On Friday. And then once you do that, you can already kind of envision what it is you want. So the act of actually putting it down on paper, and I say paper because I'm old school, but putting it down somewhere where you're either typing it in or writing it in will allow you to better plan for that session. And if it's something that you're doing when you're writing for a book or a newsletter, like on LinkedIn, you've already set the pace by putting out that all you need to do is have a title, what it is you want to discuss, and then move forward, right? And then from there, you can always go back in and put in the details, what type of content you want to discuss, some of the questions that you have, right? It's important. It's important. And then two, crafting compelling storylines, something that interests you, again, putting yourself in the audience, is probably going to be compelling to someone else, right? Things that would interest you, you are part of the public. So use that. Again, it's also having that emotional intelligence, right? What is going to stir me to action? What is going to stir me when I'm listening or reading the content that you're putting out? And then lastly, maintain quality. And writing out a calendar is going to help you do that. And consistency, that calendar is going to be extremely important. It's integral because consistency means, okay, I wrote it down. I'm going to be here on Wednesday at 6 a.m. Okay. And then you do it over and over again because the calendar is already set. So all these things, three things put together, is going to allow you to better engage the audience you already selected.
Wow, thank you so much. And it relates to it could also relate to live events or streaming events, but it doesn't apply the same, I think. But it's really, but especially for the last time, maintain quality and consistency. It's about capturing what the audience says and adapting. So if you have any question, dear Crystal, or dear anyone from the audience, including the replay team, I'm happy to reply you back. But of course, on the replay team, we cannot go back to the past and change anything. So, but we adapt to the audience, and probably in the next sessions, if you have any feedback or any question, we will be able to adapt while we are streaming the second rule and the third rule and extra. So I'm really happy. You will be there. So amazing, Crystal. It's also about engagement. That's really important. That's why I'm really happy to have the audience engaging on real. So I was also pointing, I love acronyms and pancakes. So I was finding an ACE pancake: action, curiosity, emotions. So in that, I would like to listen to hear more from you about curiosity and especially action. What when you are telling a story, what do you expect your audience to be curious about, and what is the action that you would like your audience to take?
Well, for the most part, in particular with this book, The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling, the topic of curiosity is how can I be a better storyteller? Right? I'm curious. Can I learn to be a better storyteller? And that's where I put the book together. I said, okay, right now, we're in the age of AI, right? And even because, right, people are like, well, now I can rely on AI to help me write everything. It can be a very, very, very resourceful tool for you. Absolutely. I don't discount that. But at the core of this story is you, right? Even if you're using ChatGPT or whatever AI platform you decide to use, at the core of it is you. You still have to put in the prompt to ask the AI to put together the content, right? And if you're not mindful of that, then you're not going to get, I believe, a truly much more impactful piece of content. The action that I wanted from people from this book is to realize that storytelling is in everything that we do when we communicate with one another. You mentioned being in the museum and looking at paintings. There's a story that's being told, even in the painting that you create. Now, I shared with you my recent Etsy store creations, right? These are paintings that I did years ago. And each one of them, there's a story. Now, sometimes, because the artist isn't there to convey my story, it's in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So you're thinking to yourself, what does this mean? Why is the color this dark in this area? Why am I feeling this emotion when I'm looking at this painting? Right? So these are the things. I want people to learn that storytelling, based on my book, The Action, is to become better storytellers by realizing that storytelling is truly important in our everyday lives, So,
Wow, thank you. And by the way, your heart is amazing from the heart, by the way. I loved to see your heart. So that's really incredible. The more I go on time with you, with the months and the years, the more I see multiple layers of the J that we got to see. Like the J that I've seen almost 2 years ago is not the J that I see now, because more and more I know about you. Wow, and it's also to realize that we are not we are human, we are imperfect, but it's about your desire to refine, to go to the mastery. Mastery is not the final destination. Mastery is each step that we go towards this financial destination. Mastery is not a checkbox. Mastery is a muscle. And so there's many things to talk about, but I'm going to also unleash the beast. I'm sorry to tell it like that, but there is a person that will join in 5 minutes, so I'm going to go with the flow and dance also with the blessings to have this session enriched by this amazing surprise gift that will join in 3 to 4 minutes. But right now, I'm going to fly a little bit, like captivate audience and address their inquiries, and that's also an important point. But at the same time, let me tell you that captivate is a word that I realize it could trigger. It triggers me because I don't want to imprison my audience. I want my audience to be elevated, to be autonomous and effective, and to be independent and not imprisoned by my story, because at the end they can leave the room and it's okay if they choose so. Then and then you can react on all the things that I'm presenting you. You can pick the pieces that you want to talk about. Finding common ground, understanding and adapt to the dance. That I like, because it's about you are dancing salsa. But if if your audience is dancing tango or bachata or capoeira, you have to adapt to your audience. You cannot dance salsa and then they are going to be away because They don't understand you. They don't understand salsa. They only understand their own dance. So you have to dance their dance, to try at least to adapt. That's really the key, and to meet in their space, to translate your own narrative so that they can grasp something, because else you are blah 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 blah, but they are like, and then they will not catch what you say, so you have to translate your language to their language and adapt to their space. What do you think about that? You are on mute.
What I recall,
I don't hear you in,
yeah.
okay.
So what I recall um, from understanding this were a couple of things. Um, Very early on, when I was learning to be a reporter at a cable news station, my mentor at the time, a shout out to Jerry Lyons, um, this gentleman, he he broke everything down so simple, right, in basic terms, to be able to relate to your audience. You have to talk to them in such a way that's going to be easily digested. So look at it like this: if you're creating a dish, right, and your dish is bitter, right, when you taste it and you taste that it's
Yeah.
bitter, are you going to put that on the table? Well, if they love things that are bitter, then yes. Right? But if they don't, then what you're putting on the table is not going to be something easily digested. And so for me, I was that it made sense in that moment. Oh, okay. If I put this dish on the table and it's bitter, and my audience doesn't like things that's bitter, then they're not going to eat this. They're not going to digest the information I'm sharing with them. Right? A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Yeah.
To quote Mary Poppins. And then
Oh.
then, then the other thing, the other part of that um, is when I'm out there trying to be part of that audience, right? How can I get the message out to them that they're going to hear it? How can I impact them, right? Using that emotional intelligence. Sometimes, like in the case, hi Crystal, like in the case of working at the call center, I didn't realize this, but it is something that public speakers and salespeople call mirroring, right? When you mirror the other person in a conversation, what I was doing was changing the tone and maybe a little bit of my accent to relate to the person on the other side of the phone, to establish a quick rapport, right? Like I would, and the only way I got wind of this was when I got off a call and the person goes, tapped me on my shoulder, my coworker, and he said, "Hey, were you talking to somebody in Chicago?" I said, how'd you know that? He said, I could tell by the tone and the accent that you used. I was like, okay. And then as I went throughout my day, all the regions that I talked to, I realized that my tone, intonation, inflection matched the person from that locale because I was trying to avoid conflict by trying to be relatable to them.
Whoa. So I'm going to be relatable to Jay by changing my voice accent, and I'm going to be relatable to Crystal. I'm just joking, but really amazing to hear from you, dear Crystal. How are you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good, and I am absolutely thrilled about this live. I have shared it to the village. Ollie, you know what the village is. Jay, the village is a my YouTube community and Facebook community as well. We're a lot of mental health channels, and we all support each other. And being taught about storytelling from one of the best storytellers I know, um, I have literally shared this everywhere saying you guys need to be a replay, team replay, whatever. But you guys, you want to know about storytelling and the breakdown, please watch this. um, all we're missing right now,
Yes.
Jay, is your voices. Uh, I I love story time with Jay. I did. Um, may not always see me physically there, but I was always in there listening. And your voices and your stories of Guam and, just your heart, the way you do it, you know, I can relate with what you were talking about, with the whole accents thing. And I think that's what you bring into your voices with your characters in your stories when you're doing story time with Jay, because I pick up accents very quickly. I always have. Um,
Mhm.
If I talk to somebody from the South, within 5 minutes, I've got my country twang back, and it's hilarious. But I can also speak in a proper English accent. I can pull them all out very easily, and it almost becomes second nature, like you were saying, trying to be relatable, you know, in that, in especially in that kind of field, you know. So, um, and I do want to say one thing, Ollie. When Especially like when Jay is telling his story, being captivated by it is a very, very positive thing. Like, because a good storyteller will captivate their audience. They will literally like put you there in your mind's eye. You're sitting at the edge of the seat. It almost reminds me of like back in like the 20s where you had the story time radio and stuff. Or a silly memory for me, but in the 101 Dalmatians cartoon where they're all sitting around the puppies are all sitting around the TV watching the western being told and everything, you know. But that's what a good storyteller does, whether it's in the written word or spoken like Jay does. You know, I can literally, when you're telling your stories, Jay, I can close my eyes and I can visualize everything that you're telling me crystal clear. And
Crystal clear.
to me, that is the epitome of a good storyteller, which is why I shared this live out, especially listening to you break break it down, how to do it, how to be that captivating storyteller. This is gold, Jay. I mean, honestly, this is something that you could sell and, as a coaching program to teach. And here you are, out of the kindness and love in your heart, giving it to us. And I truly do appreciate you for this. Um, I will probably watch this multiple times and break it down. Yes, I'm a good storyteller, but if I'm a good storyteller, you've got me on a couple of levels up there, and I'm not selling myself short. I know I can tell a good story. But the fact is you're on a whole another level, and I'm very blessed to be here. I'm so glad that you decided to do this live with Ollie, and I happened to check my YouTube and see it. Because I've been doing
Well,
some self care and stuff for the last 2 weeks since I got the anthology out. Now, talk about storytelling and putting something together. Very proud of it. And my dog liked it so much that she ate the hardcover proof.
oh, bon
I'm
appetit.
I'm not even kidding. But the
Wow.
pages I was able to at least still proof and see that they like all the formatting and everything was good. But yeah, she got a hold of it. I'm actually gonna frame it because that's gonna be like my favorite copy of it. I swear. But yeah, my dog
Wow.
loved it.
Tested and approved by your dog. That's so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, at least she loves me enough that she didn't eat my picture or my name on the back cover.
Ah, fair
Well,
enough. Fair enough.
it's basically what we were talking about earlier, right? Is this story digestible?
Quite literally, right?
I love it. I love
And
it.
And the thing is if you can take anything in your life and turn it into something funny or something, spin it in a way that will make your audience laugh or relate like we're doing right now, that is also a sign of a good storyteller. You want to be able to draw your audience in. And Jay, you definitely can do that. I can't wait since LinkedIn has pretty much done away with the audio rooms. I can't wait for Storytime with Jay to come to YouTube. Oh man, oh, I would promote that so hardcore. You would have the subs and everything. It would be amazing. So whenever
Well,
you want to
Crystal,
come over here to YouTube and
yeah,
start Storytime with Jay, I will help you build that channel in a minute because it
yes,
is
yes, yes.
amazing.
Crystal, I also invite him, whether he choose you or me or any, I invite him to use the capacities of streaming at its full potential because it's only not only on LinkedIn but also on YouTube and other channels. So that's why this Restream actually it's a paid one, and I'm really happy to invite anyone to take benefits of my space because it's a pro space. So here you will have not only visibility to you to LinkedIn, but also to your future materials. So because on StreamYard that is free or stream, you have still limited access. So it's just a bracket. So
Yeah, it was
yeah, hola.
digestible though.
Okay,
It was digestible.
yeah, that's a funny one.
But yeah, she didn't eat my face.
That's a funny
I
So
guess the story was digestible, huh?
yeah, on that note,
one.
hold on.
Yeah.
But
Oh, me too. Do you have a dog, Jay, that eats your story?
I did before I moved. Right, look at that. You see?
so you do know my
Oh,
pain.
wow,
Not quite as much, but yes, you do understand my pain.
wow.
Yes, and
Oh,
so this was actually a replacement for the very first book that I received, and I lost that. The reason I got this replacement was I lost that other book in the tornado.
Oh.
So I was like, "Hey, can you send me another book?" And when my dog chewed this, I was like, "Ah, no!" But
Yeah,
oh,
I caught my dog
some
in
of
mid chew. I was like, give it back."
yeah.
yeah, some of
There
my
is
friends were like, "And
yeah.
what shape floor area rug is you said Pooch going to be now?" But no, she's still in that up stage. She's one, and the breed that she is, like supposedly grow out of the I'm gonna eat everything by two, but she's a farm dog and she gets rid of the moles and she keeps um, other animals away from our garden and off of you know, our main area. So we don't get rid of her. But I, mm, when I saw that, I was mad.
Ooh. There are two. There are. It's nothing so different between "I am your father" and "I ate your book."
But yeah, now it's funny, and it was just the proof copy. It's not like I can't order you know, and I'm planning on ordering some author's copies because I have some people that I want to send signed copies to and everything anyway. So I'm just gonna have an author's copy for me, put away where she can't get to.
Mm,
you know,
thank you. And
but
Crystal,
I'm glad
do you
you
have
can
any
relate though.
do you have any question for Jay, Crystal?
um, honestly, um, okay, this one's gonna sound a little strange, but where do you get the inspiration your for story time with Jay besides the history of like your history and everything from Guam, like with your voices and stuff?
Oh, so with
Like
the voices,
why? What's your why, basically?
the why. Okay, so I wanted to basically take that idea of relating to the audience and being the audience a step further. Because one of the very first things I realized was a lot of my elders were passing away, right? And so at some point in the future, my kids and grandkids won't be able to have that opportunity to hear those stories from the source. And so for me, it was, well, then let me take my elders and their voices and bring it to them.
So basically preserving that your history, your culture in a sense.
Right.
And
And then
that
doing it in
is
such a way that would be
Mhm.
so would be relatable.
And
Cletus,
engaging. It
yeah,
is very engaging.
absolutely. There
Mhm.
was a time when I was heckled in a live performance. And it was a university professor who taught art. And I was, he's no longer with us on this earthly plane. But and bless him, because I realized the power and the ability to have a discussion in the middle of my performance. And so what I did was I I was using the anti-Charo voice. So this older Chamorro lady, right, telling her story, and out of the crowd, the university professor, enjoying his glass of wine, decides he's going to ask the character a question, right? And I was like, ooh, he's in the middle of my performance doing this. Okay. So I said, like, boy, I'm so disappointed that you're going to interrupt me when I'm telling a story. Did your mama teach you how to behave? You're so disrespectful.
I love it. I love that you didn't break character either and you just kept going. Is the that right there shows your commitment to preserving your story and being a performer and everything, because it is putting on a performance. You're on a stage telling a story, whether it's, your heritage stories from Guam, or, and I love all of your characters. Your your uncle, the country uncle, is my favorite voice.
Oh,
I have to
Cletus.
say, I can, yes, I do. I love Cletus, but that's because I'm a country girl, but he's so funny and so just, I just, the picture I get in my head when you're doing that voice is a older gentleman in bib overalls with a straw hat and a
Yes.
piece of straw hanging out of his mouth with a pitchfork in his hand, like, let's go bale some hay. And it's a great vision, but no shirt on underneath the bib overalls. It just the bib overalls. Like, I just envision a good old boy,
Oh yeah.
and that's and I don't I don't remember if you've ever actually given a full out description of him when I've been there, but just hearing the voice, that's the vision I get. And
Right.
that's how good of a storyteller you are, because you literally, just by the way you present your characters, your stories, we get these vision of these characters in our mind's eye, and we can see them doing what you're telling us in the stories, you know, and
Yeah.
I
like,
have
it's just amazing to me. Mhm, mhm,
Go ahead.
I have two questions. When I was first question, do your uncle was funny at the original and you transfer his funniness, or do you add some of your funniness that he was not quite funny but you add your own funniness? And then the second question, but first question, go ahead for the first question.
Yeah, sure. So Cletus was born because of a funny story. Cletus was born because I was channel surfing and I came on to the outdoors channel, and there was a gentleman sitting. I think he was in the woods, and there was a pond nearby, and he was hunting ducks. And I was like, okay. I sat there watching for 5 minutes, and I was falling asleep because it's just like watching golf, right? The commentators, they're all whispering. I'm I'm hunting ducks right now, and right over there. So he was whispering, and I was like, okay. First of all, if somebody's whispering, I'm normally going to be nodding off anyway because there's no inflection or whatever, right? But then the visuals were just of this pond, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I turned the channel and I watched something for about, a usual show, which is like 30 minutes or so. And for giggles, I turned it back to the outdoors channel to see what was next. And it was the same guy in the same place, just with a pile of ducks next to him now. Right. And I'm like, who would watch this? And how could you stay awake the entire time?
I can't. Um, I can't stand fishing shows because of the same reason. Um, Honestly, I'm not big into fishing. I'd rather be swimming in the ocean. Don't get me wrong, I love eating it, but
Mhm.
sitting there with my pole, it's so it's
Yeah.
so boring. I
So
can't do it.
so yeah, and so the
Mhm.
story was, um, the, and so there's a skit that I do on why somebody would create the show and why ducks are evil. We should share. I should share that sometime. Maybe it'll be a
Yeah,
whole show.
yeah, with joy, with Jay. And so the second question: are you always telling stories of people that you know or you watched, or could you also envision to tell stories of people that tell stories and that you are transferring their own stories?
Yes. So Cletus oftentimes is something like he shares stories. The character shares stories that would be from people I've never really met, right? Like I know I've heard these stories before, secondhand from other people. And so taking those stories and creating a character to kind of meld that together. So, sort of like urban legends meets, reality, and that's how the character is able to relate to other people. So there's definitely that. There was there was there was a time we were called to do skits um, at the call center, and boy, did I did I cause a stir. Um, there was a point where I was supposed to be this auctioneer, um, and auctioneers, right, are like that,
Very, 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 very fast. And
very fast, super
yeah.
fast. So I, but I was actually the opposite. So to make the character funny, I slowed down his auctioneering. So Cletus like was super slow in trying to sell something. Um, and then to change that to kind of juxtapose him to someone else, right? So he's trying to sell John Deere tractors, used ones. And so the next character, though, was a guy from the UK at a like an auction at like Sotheby's and someplace like that, right? Where it's luxury items and historical artifacts and things like that, right? So just the juxtaposition and the the change in tone made Cletus and that skit a little bit a lot more funnier than just doing it, straight faced and the way normally everybody else would do the character. So, and plus
Yeah.
it was
Oh,
it was at a bunch of people who are from Alabama who've been to these auctions.
yeah. And then I was realizing an interesting question because um, do you do characters on live events or only when you are live here? Because when you are live here, you are hiding yourself from the camera. But when you are live in front of an audience that are seeing you face to face, you cannot really. Okay, I put my. So you I don't know if you are if you can react about that.
Oh, sure, yes. So I've done it in the past, like that where I got heckled. I was actually in front of a crowd. So one of the things that it's always that feedback from the audience that I didn't notice. It was like my facial features change to suit the character. So my entire body, right, embodies the character. And so if I do Uncle Bones, which is the older Chamorro gentleman, right, I think I'm usually like this. I'm slouched a little bit. There's age on me, and so I'm a little bit hunched over like this, carrying the weight of the world on me and a bunch of cement bags and things like that. Right, that's definitely going to give me that posture. And then
Mm.
um, the way he talks, because he's missing teeth, you see my mouth move differently when I'm embodying the character of Uncle Bones. So, and I didn't. It wasn't something that was conscious initially.
Mm.
It was something that somebody pointed out. Hey, your face changes when you are you doing that on purpose? And I said, no, it's well, I didn't even know I was doing that. So no, it's not on purpose. But now that I know that, it makes perfect sense because I'm using every part of me to express the story in such a way that feels authentic. And so even just looking the part, that happens. The other part of that is I do I some so I do the voice characters, but I also put on costumes to embody the character. So I would wear a baseball cap, right? A fisherman's baseball cap with the net at the back and stuff like that when I'm and it's greasy and stuff. So that's basically Cletus. Um, Uncle Bones, he wears a military jacket or shirt because he's a veteran and he's an older man who was in the military. Um, and the older Chamorro woman, Auntie Charl, she wears what we call a mestiza, where it has the em, sort of embodiment of older Spanish style clothing, similar to that of the Philippines, right? Some of the flared um, shoulders that they used to wear, sometimes still wear. So yeah, I do live audiences. I do performances in front of live audiences. I've done some as well with um, poetry slams. I did an entire show, well, performance using I think four out of the main five characters that I use, and so it was just and that from that skit came the idea of the storytelling strategist because at one point I was called out um, for my authenticity of sharing the culture, right? And they were like, well, we know that you do acting and you do it pretty well. So when you're sharing your culture as a cultural practitioner, are you acting? And I was like, it hurt my heart. And I wanted to literally raise my fist because I was so mad. I was
Mm.
so upset that somebody would call out the authenticity of my performance and my love of sharing culture. Um, and but I realized
Oof,
that
yeah.
I wasn't just a poet. I was a storyteller, and that's why acting was important so that I can reach broader audiences. So I did that performance. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. There is a thin line, and I will tell. We have still 5 to 10 minutes. I think I don't want to overwhelm you too much, but I was. We are going to talk in few minutes about that because I think about a theme that is nowadays used. But then the last point I was noting, well, I was noting a lot of points, but feedback is a tool for refinement, not a force for compromise. And that's not an easy thing because it's a dent between, okay, I receive feedback and I adapt, but I don't want to lose my own authenticity, my own story. So feel free to tell us more about that.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. I mean, like it's when, especially in that instance, right? It was about refinement, not about compromising my storytelling. And at that moment, that's when I realized the power of storytelling over just being a poet or just being this or just being that. When I share my poems, when I share the stories of my history, when I embody the characters, all of those things put together makes me a storyteller, not just singular, a poet, or just this person who writes poetry. I'm really not just a public speaker. I'm all those things together as a storyteller, as a storyteller. So I really did not compromise. What I did was I refined what I was doing and put it all together under the umbrella of being a storyteller. Don't compromise.
Yes, yes, exactly. Don't compromise. And I was writing also not diluting the essence of the story. That's why it's also important to adapt, but at the same time to stay grounded with yourself, to not stretch your performance to people please your audience. That's also important because there, in your audience there will be different kinds of resonance, and it will be about to really stay grounded to your own essence and not to lose yourself to to fit to the audience expectations. And that's the most important, I think. That's also the way, like, okay, you don't resonate with my story. Okay, I did my best, but this is my story. I'm not going to change my story for people pleasing you. So that's really also important to stay grounded with your value, to adapt, of course, to refine to any feedback, but to stay grounded to your story so that you are not transmuting your, I don't like this metaphor, but you are not transmuting your Coca-Cola to fit to the Pepsi standards, you know, because in each case there will be an audience, like to not metamorphose your McDonald's to Burger King audience. So that's really, I love the metaphor because you are making us in appetite with your amazing metaphor. Aside that, I was also writing some other things. Meet your audience at their space, orchestra. Who is your audience? Who needs to read or listen to your story? Does your story offer us solutions? I'm going to pause right now and let you react about that.
Right. Absolutely. So I think the last part, really, the last thing you mentioned is important. Here's why. What are you doing with your story? Are you just telling a story to tell a story? Or is there a call to action? Is there something you want your audience to do or achieve? Achieve. For me, it was, what do I want the audience to achieve with the book? I want them to become better storytellers. I want them to become better storytellers. I just don't want to put out a book just to put out a book. And that was the whole reason behind it. And, this took me a couple of years to realize that it's important to have a call to action. because otherwise, what is the story about? It won't. There's no rhyme or reason for it, right? If we're just telling a story to tell a story, right? Anybody could do that, but to have one that's impactful, maybe there isn't a call to action. Maybe there's a question, and maybe that question allows them to realize the actions they want to achieve on their own. But at some point, your story should have some sort of impact on the audience you've basically selected in your mind.
Wow. And I was thinking also a metaphor to close this session that you can react on, because it's like also there might be multiple layers of call to actions, like a movie from Walt Disney from like 60, 80 years ago could have multiple intents, multiple layers, depending on the kind of public. Because I realize that there are mainly it's like Winnie the Pooh, these Mulan, all these kind of Disney movies. There are the public is for the children, but then there is a public that is like the children that are growing, adults and elders. They don't have the same perception, understanding that they had when they were children. Like we are when we are seeing as adults Winnie the Pooh, we don't have the same grasp that when we are seeing Winnie the Pooh as a child, because we have different layers of lecture. That's why reading a book is important, and not like, oh, I came already in this restaurant once or twice. I'm not going to be back. Well, it's like the same with the book. Don't say, okay, I've read that book. It's over. I know it. No, you don't. I truly believe that we are grasping each time layers of freedom. It's like coffee. You percolate once, you percolate twice. Of course, the coffee is different, but it's like it's really important to not stick to one only grasp. And last but not least, I was thinking also the call to actions. There is a call to action that is spiritual. Like I want you public, I want my audience to be able to be confident when they are sharing their stories, to know how they can share the stories. And then there is the call to action. Hey, by the way, I am a storyteller strategist. You can book me. So there are also multiple call to action, and that's why I'm really happy to give you the stage. Not only because I'm really happy to read your book and to be myself accountable to read my book, but also to give you a space and to also to let this uh, my audience, your audience, to know more about you and to be able to see, okay, but you can also be a speaker. You can also or corporate or public speaking in an organization, and to give Jay the full layers, not only about people to read their book, but also because time is precious. There are billions of books, and we can read books that are 100 years ago. The writer is not there anymore on Earth. That's also the magic on book. But don't wait 100 years. Like Jay is alive. I am alive. Jay is alive. Enjoy as much as you can breathe. And don't wait. Don't delay. So that's my message. Don't delay to tell your story, because if you don't tell your story, it's lost. So that's my final take. Feel free to add your last thoughts before I close properly the room.
Absolutely. I think the whole reason I wrote the book, understanding the audience, we are in this pivotal time of AI and content creation and brand building and all the other things that come along with AI as a very, very resourceful tool, like I mentioned in the beginning. But we have to get back to basics so that we, as not only the audience, but as authors, right, storytellers, how we can best utilize that tool. And we're not going to know that unless we understand the rules of engagement. Go back to the basics of understanding the rules of engagement in storytelling. We heard it maybe in high school, some of us in college, right? But let's reacquaint ourselves with the rules of engagement in storytelling. Understand it. Buy the book or reach out to me. I want to live in my purpose of being the storytelling strategist in 2025. I want to help people tell their story. There's a song out there right now, and there's a line in it: "Standing on business." I'm going to be standing on business in 2025. The business for me is storytelling and helping you tell your story. Your story is important. Rule your story. So I'll end with that. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity, Ali, to be part of the book club and sharing all of this information with everyone.
With
Man,
joy.
it was a joy for me. Thank you.
It's a joy that will continue 9 other times because there are 9 other rules, if you choose so, because at some point you say 9 is too much, it's okay. But I'm really happy to, as much as we can, because that might be times where I say, I'm sorry, but this week, but it will last how much it will last, depending on our agendas, hopefully until end of March. Other rules that I'm really happy to tackle with you. And at the same time, it's acknowledging that really I pour my heart in it also, because my friend, one of my best friend passed away a month and 7 days ago, and we never know if Ollie or if Jay will be there in 1 year, one day. So before closing the session, imagine that you are living your last day on Earth today. What is your departing message to the world? And I will ask that each time at each session, by the way.
In this moment, it is, I hope that my story has had an impact on someone or the rest of the world in such a way that it will be profound and they will move forward in sharing their stories or help them share their stories.
Let me tell you that it is the case. I don't know for others, but for me, it is the case. I resonate with you, my brother. Thank you so much for accepting this challenge to share the 10 amazing sessions talking more about your book. And of course, that means also talking more about yourself, your life, so that we can impact the world. And thank you again, Crystal, for joining on stage and for commenting. This is also a time for the replay team that I would like to thank. And for the next session that will occur normally each Monday at the same time, you are welcome to join the stage. You are welcome to also comment and ask any question, even between the sessions. We will be back. We will be happy to reply to that. Thank you, Jay, and wish you an amazing day. Thank you so much, and see you next Monday, same time, for the next rule, which is, I don't know by heart the next rule. Do you know the second rule?
Yes, the second rule is use a hook.
That will be amazing hook. And you will be Peter Pan, and I will be the Captain Crochet, the Captain Hook.
Okay. Look forward to it.
Bye,